حي على الفلاح.
Mahatma Gandhi said about Muhammad, "I became more than ever convinced that it was not the sword that won a place for Islam in those days. When I closed the second volume of the Prophet's biography, I was sorry there was not more for me to read of that great life." Sir Bernard says, if any religion had the chance of ruling over England, nay Europe, within the next 100 years, it could be Islam. Annie Besant said, "It is impossible for anyone who studies the life and character of the great prophet of Arabia, who knows how he taught and how he lived, to feel anything but reverence for that mighty prophet Muhammad." King Charles III said, "If there is much misunderstanding in the West about the nature of Islam, there is also much ignorance about the debt our own culture and civilization owe to the Islamic world. The medieval Islamic world, from Central Asia to the shores of the Atlantic, was a world where scholars and men of learning flourished." Pope John Paul II said, "The religiosity of Muslims deserve respect. It is impossible not to admire, for example, their fidelity to prayer. The image of believers in Allah, who without caring about time or place, fall to their knees and immerse themselves in prayer, remains a model for all those who invoke the true God." Head of the state, as well as the church, he was Caesar and Pope in one. But he was Pope without the Pope's pretensions, and Caesar without the legions of Caesar, without a standing army, without a bodyguard, without a police force, without a fixed revenue. If ever a man ruled by a right divine, it was Muhammad. For he had all the powers without their supports. He cared not for the dressings of power. The simplicity of his private life was in keeping with his public life. We have a book absolutely unique in its origin, in its preservation, on the substantial authority of which no one has ever been able to cast a serious doubt. The name Muhammad is the most common in the world, in all the countries around the world. Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Turkey, Syria, Lebanon. There are more Muhammads than anyone else. They gave me the most famous name because I was a champ. I am not afraid of dying. I have faith. I do everything I can to live my life right, and I believe that dying will bring me closer to God. I wanted to know the best of the life of one who holds today an undisputed sway over the hearts of millions of mankind. I became more than ever convinced that it was not the sword that won a place for Islam in those days in the scheme of life. It was the rigid simplicity, the utter self-effacement of the Prophet, the scrupulous regard for pledges, his intense devotion to his friends and followers, his intrepidity, his fearlessness, his absolute trust in God and in his own mission. These and not the sword carried everything before them and surmounted every obstacle. When I closed the second volume of the Prophet's biography, I was sorry there was not more for me to read of that great life. Philosopher, orator, apostle, legislator, warrior, conqueror of ideas, restorer of rational dogmas, of a cult without images, the founder of 20 terrestrial empires and of one spiritual empire, that is Muhammad. As regards all standards by which human greatness may be measured, we may well ask, is there any man greater than he? I have the characteristics of many religions, but I am a Muslim. I love God. I pray more than I can. When I die, I will die a Muslim. This is me as a person. God protects me. He comes to me in all possible aspects. Being a Muslim does not mean that I became an angel, but it will make me a better person because I strive to keep myself away from vices. If I commit a sin, it is not because Islam is imperfect, but because I am weak and Islam came to complete the shortcomings. If any religion had the chance of ruling over England, nay Europe, within the next 100 years, it could be Islam. I have always held the religion of Muhammad in high estimation because of its wonderful vitality. It is the only religion which appears to me to possess that assimilating capacity to the changing phase of existence which can make itself appeal to every age. I have studied him, the wonderful man, and in my opinion, from being an antichrist, he must be called the Saviour of Humanity. I believe that if a man like him were to assume the dictatorship of the modern world, he would be succeeding in solving its problems in a way that would bring it the much needed peace and happiness. I have prophesied about the faith of Muhammad, that it would be acceptable to the Europe of tomorrow as it is beginning to be acceptable to the Europe of today. I don't normally talk about my religion publicly because I don't want people to associate me and my flaws with this beautiful thing. I wanted to have a meaningful life, a spiritual life, not just what my hands can hold. I felt like I've always had this notion that life should mean something. The thing that comforts me about it is the idea that all of this is from a singular source, and the source is ultimately kind. And even though we may not understand the intentions of this source, we are all connected and bound by it. His readiness to undergo persecution for his beliefs, the high moral character of the men who believed in him and looked up to him as a leader, and the greatness of his ultimate achievement, all argue his fundamental integrity. To suppose Muhammad an impostor raises more problems than it solves. Moreover, none of the great figures of history is so poorly appreciated in the West as Muhammad. Thus, not merely must we credit Muhammad with essential honesty and integrity of purpose. If we are to understand him at all, if we are to correct the errors we have inherited from the past, we must not forget the conclusive proof is a much stricter requirement than a show of plausibility, and in a matter of such is this only to be attained with difficulty. It makes you ask the question, what is success? Is it fame or fortune? Does that measure what success means to you, or is it faith? For me, real success is faith. If God is not smiling upon me, I am not successful. I don't care even if I have $1 billion in the bank. And what good am I if I have $1 billion sitting in the bank in the first place? My faith has helped make me the man I am right now. With the love and the respect that I put out there, I love everybody that loves God. That's what I'm about. The second I walked in Mecca, tears came down my eyes. Tears of joy. My whole life I wanted to go to Mecca to pray and to give my gratitude to Allah. It is impossible for anyone who studies the life and character of the great prophet of Arabia, who knows how he taught and how he lived, to feel anything but reverence for that mighty prophet, one of the great messengers of the Supreme. And although in what I put to you I shall say many things which may be familiar to many, yet I myself feel whenever I reread them a new way of admiration, a new sense of reverence for that mighty Arabian teacher. What we had learned growing up, it didn't fit on me like Islam did. Islam feels like a tailor-made suit for me in my life. Islam feels right, and I felt it's not about what my mother was. So this is how I'm going to be. It's about finding your own journey. We are human, he said when asked about being a Muslim. We have faults. We make mistakes. That's what religion is for, to help you correct your mistakes. He also said, Islam will one day be the world's religion and will conquer the world. If there is much misunderstanding in the West about the nature of Islam, there is also much ignorance about the debt our own culture and civilization owe to the Islamic world. It is a failure which stems, I think, from the straitjacket of history which we have inherited. The medieval Islamic world, from Central Asia to the shores of the Atlantic, was a world where scholars and men of learning flourished. But because we have tended to see Islam as the enemy of the West, as an alien culture, society, and system of belief, we have tended to ignore or erase its great relevance to our own history. On how Christianity can learn from Islam, he says, Islam can teach us today a way of understanding and living in the world which Christianity itself is the poor of having lost. At the heart of Islam is its preservation of an integral view of the universe. He added that Islam refuses to separate man and nature, religion and science, mind and matter, and has preserved a metaphysical and unified view of ourselves and the world around us. People don't even know. Me, Busta Rhymes, Luke Fiasco, they don't even know we are Muslim. People think a Muslim has to have a turban or a big beard. It's stupid. The religiosity of Muslims deserve respect. It is impossible not to admire. For example, their fidelity to prayer, the image of believers in Allah who, without caring about time or place, fall to their knees and immerse themselves in prayer, remains a model for all those who invoke the true God, in particular for those Christians who, having deserted their magnificent cathedrals, pray only a little or not at all. I did Ramadan for 3 days with my friend from Kuwait. It was hard, but it was good. It felt good. I also listened to the Quran on my phone. I have an app. What actions are most excellent? To gladden the heart of human beings, to feed the hungry, to help the afflicted, to lighten the sorrow of the sorrowful, and to remove the sufferings of the injured. I hope the time is not far off when I shall be able to unite all the wise and educated men of all the countries and establish a uniform regime based on the principle of the Quran, which alone are true and which alone can lead men to happiness. I saw Islam as the correct way of life, and I chose to try to live that way. Being a Muslim has also been a challenge because so many people do not understand Islam. My choosing Islam was not a political statement. It was a spiritual statement. Islam is about finding your own space, My choice of Muhammad to lead the list of the world's most influential persons may surprise some leaders and may be questioned by others, but he was the only man in history who was supremely successful on both the secular and religious level. It is probable that the relative influence of Muhammad on Islam has been larger than the combined influence of Jesus Christ and St. Paul on Christianity. It is the unparalleled combination of secular and religious influence which I feel entitles Muhammad to be considered the most influential single figure in human history. No other religion in history spread so rapidly as Islam. The West has widely believed that this surge of religion was made possible by the sword, but no modern scholar accepts this idea. And the Quran is explicit in the support of the freedom of conscience. Like almost every major prophet before him, Muhammad fought shy of serving as a transmitter of God's word, sensing his own inadequacy. But the angel commanded, "Read." So far as we know, Muhammad was unable to read or write, but he began to dictate those inspired words, which would soon revolutionize a large segment of the earth. There is one God. In all things, Muhammad was profoundly practical. When his beloved son Ibrahim died, an eclipse occurred, and rumors of God's personal condolence quickly arose. Whereupon Muhammad is said to have announced, "An eclipse is a phenomenon of nature. It is foolish to attribute such things to the death or birth of a human being." At Muhammad's own death, an attempt was made to defy him. But the man who was to become his administrative successor removed the hysteria with one of the noblest speeches in religious history. "If there are any among you who worship Muhammad, he is dead. But if it is God you worship, he lives forever."